Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth? Maybe it's because you don't understand SSA's disability language. Let's go over some of the terms and acronyms that you're going to come across when you apply for SSDI. Let's start with types of claims. Types of claims are getting into the actual thing that you're applying for. SSDI stands for Social Security Disability Insurance. That's the one where you pay into the system to apply for disability and other benefits. SSDI is also called Title II because it's under Title II of the Social Security Act. So the Social Security Act has different titles, and Title II is the one that applies to SSDI. Then there is Title 16, which is dealing with SSI, which stands for Supplemental Security Income. Now, under Title II, aka SSDI, there are three main types of claims that you're going to come across. The first one is called DIB. DIB stands for Disability Insurance Benefits. DIB is what most workers apply for when they can't work anymore because of a disability. So they're applying for DIB benefits. But there's also what's called DWB. DWB stands for Disabled Widows or Widowers Benefits, which means a person can apply for disability on their deceased spouse's insured status. Then there's what's called CDB, which stands for Childhood Disability Benefits. It's also called DAC, Disabled Adult Child. The reason why is because this applies to people who were disabled as a child, but are still disabled as an adult. But they can apply for this type of benefit if it can be established that they were disabled before the age of 22. Now, to throw in a freebie for people who are applying for SSI, I'm going to break down some of the acronyms for SSI claims. DI stands for Disabled Individual. So if you're applying for SSI for yourself, you would fall under the DI category. There's also DC, which stands for Disabled Child. So children can apply, well, not children applying, but the parents can apply for the children to receive disabled child benefits under SSI. Then there's also BI, which stands for a blind individual. So people who are blind and are low to no income or have really low income or resources can apply based on blindness. Now let's get into claim levels. Claim levels are really dealing with the level of application you're putting in. So it depends on where you are on the food chain when it comes to applications. So the first level is the initial level. It's when you first apply for some kind of Social Security disability. It's the first level. The next level up from that is called a reconsideration, also called a recon. It is the first level of appeals. So it will be the time when you are denied, or in some cases allowed, but there's a little different situation with that allowance where you are contesting the decision, maybe because there's an onset issue. After the recon, the next level of appeal is called the ALJ, which stands for Administrative Law Judge. So this is the first time that you would actually have to deal with a judge. After the ALJ is the AC level, which stands for Appeals Council. And then after the Appeals Council is called the FC, which stands for Federal Court. The FC is the last level, which means after that, there's no chance to appeal. There are some rare cases where you may be able to fight it some more, but as far as appeals go, the FC is the last stop. Now let's talk about the different types of Social Security offices that are involved in disability claims. Let's start with the FO. FO stands for Field Office. This is your local Social Security office. In some cases, you might even see the acronym DO, which means District Office. So either way, it's talking about the same kind of office. It is your local Social Security office. Next, we have what's called a DDS, which stands for Disability Determination Services. This is the office working on your actual SSDI claim. They're making the decision or determination on whether you are allowed or denied. Then there's DQB, which stands for Disability Quality Branch. The Disability Quality Branch is the office that reviews claims that were decided at the DDS. So when a claim is finished at the DDS, it may be sampled by the DQB to go over the decision to make sure that everything was done the right way. Then there's WSU. WSU stands for Workload Support Unit. You might not see this a whole lot, but I think it's important to point out because the WSU is the federal level field office. So they're inside the regional office and they're doing the same kind of work that your local office would do. And on that note, I'll throw in the PC or the PSC. PC could stand for Payment Center or Processing Center. PSC stands for Program Support Center. It's basically talking about the same office. They're located in the regional offices nationwide. And these offices have their own DDSs working on disability claims. Now let's get into a really important category, which is claim or case outcomes. So these are the actual result of your disability claim. Let's start with one that kind of sticks in my craw a little bit, and that's allowance. Now, you hear people on the street talking about, I was approved, or I'm trying to get approved. Well, an allowance is basically an approval. It's the technical term for when you win your claim. So on the street, it's called approval, but in the SSA disability verse, it's called an allowance. So you might hear me say allowance more than approval, but sometimes I'll let it slide and say approval because it's easier for you to understand. Then there's a denial. A denial is a denial. You got denied. Then when you have a result at the initial and recon levels, that result is called a determination. Technically, it's not a decision. It's a determination if you're applying for the first time or if you are appealing for the first time, which is the recon level. But when you're facing a judge, it's actually called a decision. The judge is actually rendering a decision. So whether it's the ALJ, the AC, or the FC, doesn't matter. Those are called decisions, while for initial and recon claims, they're called determinations. Now let's get into the onset date. The onset date is the date at which either you or the field office or the DDS determines you were first disabled. So the AOD, which is the alleged onset date, is the date you first said that you could not work anymore because of your conditions. Then there's what's called a POD, which is a potential onset date, which is what the FO says you were first disabled. Then there's the EOD, which is the established onset date, which is the date that the DDS who's working on your claim decides that this is the date when you first became unable to work because of your conditions. Then there's the diary. The diary is when you are allowed or approved for SSDI, you will get a diary. It could be a 1-year diary. It could be a 3-year diary. It could be a 7-year diary. But the diary is talking about the time frame in which you will need to wait until you have a CDR. And I'll talk about CDR in a moment. So essentially, when you are allowed or approved to be on the rolls for SSDI, that diary just tells you when you can expect to get that CDR started. An electronic folder is where all of your decisions, all of your cases are being stored. It's an electronic form in the Social Security systems. And this will have all your records, all of your applications for every claim that you filed. And it keeps a historical record of those items. So when you have a determination or a decision, you can request a copy of your electronic file or electronic case file so you can go over those records to prepare yourself for the next step. Now let's get into the DDS and what happens at the DDS and the things that you need to know about the DDS. First thing is the examiner. Now the examiner can be called different things in different states. Some states they're called an adjudicator. In other states they're called an analyst. At the federal level, they could be called a specialist, but they're called different things, but it's the same job. They're the ones that are working on your claim, getting the records, sending you to appointments, and making the overall decision on your claim. Then there's the MC, the medical consultant. This is an on-staff doctor at the DDS. And this person is reviewing the medical records to make the medical determination on your claim. Then there's MER. MER stands for Medical Evidence of Record. It is talking about the medical evidence from your doctors that are going to be found in your claim. The listing of impairments, aka the Blue Book, is basically the criteria that your condition needs to meet in order to be an automatic allowance on the medical alone. Now, in the Blue Book, if you meet one of those criteria for an automatic allowance, that says that you meet a medical listing or you meet a listing. In some cases, you could equal a listing, which is saying that you don't meet all the requirements or criteria, but you may meet some of them, and taking different pieces from inside the Blue Book, put them all together, and they can equal the severity of one of those listings. The CE is a consultative examination. So in your claim, the examiner may send you to an appointment to a doctor, not one of SSA's doctors. Let's get that straight, because the doctors at the DDS are SSA's doctors. But the CE doctor is on contract to perform examinations to help your claim get the medical evidence it needs. Next, the RFC is called a Residual Functional Capacity Form. The MC completes that when they see that you don't meet or equal a listing. And the RFC represents the most you can do with your medical conditions in an 8-hour workday or 40-hour work week. The RFC by itself, if you see that, that's dealing with physical impairments. But you might see sometimes a PRFC. The P stands for physical. But for mental, there is a separate type of RFC form called a mental RFC or MRFC. So there's one for physical conditions and one for mental conditions. When you hear me mention the term MedVoc, that's dealing with medical vocational issues. So this involves not just your medical issues, but also your vocational issues, your work. What did you do in the world of work when you had a job? And on that note, when you see PRW, PRW stands for past relevant work. This is talking about the work that you used to do within the last 5 years, as of June 22nd, 2024. The last 5 years of work is considered PRW. Now let's get into the last category, which is dealing with CDRs. A CDR is a continuing disability review. This is when your diary expires and SSA says it's time to review your case to see whether you are still significantly disabled to stay on the rolls, or if you've improved enough to be taken off of disability. If you are found to still be significantly disabled, or if you haven't had any significant medical improvement, then your decision will be a continuance. In other words, your benefits will continue. If Social Security determines that your situation with your medical conditions is no longer that serious, then they will do what's called a cessation, which is ceasing your benefits. And you know what? I didn't talk about SGA. SGA stands for Substantial Gainful Activity. This is the threshold that lets you know if you are making too much money to apply for SSDI. If you stay under SGA, then you are still eligible to apply for SSDI. And when it comes to CDRs, SGA is important because when you go over that limit, then there becomes an issue with you being able to continue to receive benefits. But before you get to that point, you have to go through your TWP or trial work period, which is 9 months when you go over the TWP threshold, which is less than the SGA threshold. So when you go over the TWP for 9 months, and they don't have to be back to back, but 9 months in a 60-month rolling period, and you go over those 9 months, then you now are under SGA, trying to stay under SGA to make sure your benefits continue. If you go over SGA on the rolls, then you can have your benefits ceased. But when you go back under that, then your benefits will restart without you having to fill out a whole new application. And that period after the TWP is called the EPE, the Extended Period of Eligibility. But once the EPE ends and you go over SGA, then your benefits will be terminated. I can go on and on all day long about the types of things that SSA deals with when it comes to their language. And I don't think it's really necessary for you to know all of them because it's just going too deep in the weeds for you to be trying to figure this stuff out. So what you would do is use this video as a way to remind yourself of what these terms mean. These are the basic ones to cover. If you have these basic terms, you're going to be all right. Now, if there's other terms that come across your screen that you're not familiar with, or you get a notice and there's terms that you don't understand, that's where the Yoda comes in. One thing you can do to kind of help you get the edge on other people is to become a member of my channel. I have 3 levels where you can be involved as a member of my channel. You get access to members only live streams. You get priority attention on comments. You get shout outs on videos and live streams and so much more. All you gotta do is hit the join button on my channel and you'll be able to see how you can become a member of my channel. And I'm telling you, this is gonna be a benefit to you because I have a lot more to give you than somebody else who's not a member of my channel. In the meantime, take a look at this video just to keep the party going so you can see what else I have to say about Social Security disability. And I'll see you on the other side in the next video.